My name is Evelyn Morgan, I'm 65 years old, and yesterday my own son screamed in my face, "Apologize to my wife or get out of this house." I just said, "All right." Before I continue, please like this story, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. You know what hurts more than the screaming? The look in his eyes when he said it. Like I was nothing. Like I was the problem. Like the woman who gave him life, who sacrificed everything for him, who held him through every fever, every heartbreak, every failure, was suddenly the villain in his story. And you know what hurt even more? The smug little smile on her face. My daughter-in-law. Standing there with her arms crossed, that satisfied gleam in her eyes, like she'd finally won some twisted game I didn't even know we were playing. She accused me of being rude. Can you believe that? Rude. Me. The woman who opened my home to her, who welcomed her with open arms when my son brought her into our lives. She said I undermined her in front of their friends. That I disrespected her parenting. That I made her feel small and unwelcome in what she called her home. Her home. The house I bought with my own money. The house I worked 3 jobs to afford. The house where I raised my son alone after his father walked out on us when he was just 4 years old. But there she stood, pointing her perfectly manicured finger at me, listing off my crimes like some prosecuting attorney. My son, my beautiful boy who I thought would always have my back, just nodded along. Nodded. Like a puppet. Every word she said, he absorbed like gospel truth. He didn't even look at me. Didn't ask for my side. Didn't pause to think, wait, this is my mother. The woman who never gave up on me. Maybe there's more to this story. No. He just turned to me with that cold, hard expression and issued his ultimatum. Apologize or get out. As if I were some stranger who'd overstayed their welcome. As if the past 41 years meant nothing. As if every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every penny I scraped together to give him a better life could be erased with one-sided story from the woman who'd been systematically pushing me out of his life for the past 3 years. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw a man I didn't recognize anymore. Where was my son? The boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms? The teenager who cried on my shoulder when his first girlfriend broke his heart? The young man who promised me that no matter what, we'd always be a team? That boy was gone. And standing in his place was this stranger who believed I was capable of cruelty. So I said it. Quietly. Calmly. All right. Just one word. But the room went silent. I think they expected me to cry, to beg, to grovel at their feet and plead for forgiveness for sins I didn't commit. I think she expected me to crumble, to play the role of the apologetic mother-in-law who knows her place. But I didn't. I just stood there, looked them both in the eye, and said, all right. The confusion on their faces almost made me laugh. Almost. But there was nothing funny about any of this. Nothing funny about watching your child choose a manipulator over you. Nothing funny about being cast as the villain in your own home. Let me tell you how we got here. Let me take you back to the beginning, before she came into the picture, before everything fell apart. Back when it was just me and my son against the world. I was 24 when his father left. 24 with a 4-year-old child, no college degree, and exactly $317 in my bank account. I remember the exact amount because I counted it over and over that first night, trying to figure out how we were going to survive. His father didn't leave a note. Didn't leave child support. Just left. Disappeared like we meant nothing. So I did what I had to do. I worked as a waitress during the day, cleaned offices at night, and took in sewing on the weekends. I wore the same 3 outfits for 2 years because every penny went to keeping a roof over our heads and food on our table. I went without so my son could have. I skipped meals so he could eat seconds. I wore shoes with holes in them so he could have new sneakers for school. And I never complained. Not once. Because that's what mothers do. We sacrifice. We endure. We give everything we have and then find more to give. I put myself through night school, earned my degree, got a better job. Worked my way up from secretary to office manager to eventually running my own small accounting firm. Every promotion, every raise, every success, I thought of him. I built a life for us. A good life. I bought this house when he was 12. It wasn't much, but it was ours. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, a kitchen where we ate dinner together every single night. I made sure he had everything he needed. Piano lessons, summer camps, college funds. I went without vacations, without new clothes, without any luxury for myself, because his future mattered more than my comfort. He was a good boy. A sweet boy. He used to tell me I was his best friend. Used to say that when he grew up, he was going to buy me a big house and take care of me the way I took care of him. I used to laugh and tell him all I wanted was for him to be happy and kind. That's all any mother really wants, isn't it? For their child to grow into a good person. Then he met her. Jessica. She came into our lives like a hurricane disguised as a spring breeze. At first, I was happy for him. He was 27, successful in his career, and he'd been lonely. He deserved love. He deserved companionship. When he introduced us at a family dinner, she was all smiles and charm. She complimented my cooking, asked about my work, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. I should have seen the signs. The way she subtly corrected him when he spoke. The way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes when he talked about our close relationship. The way she changed the subject whenever I shared a memory from his childhood. But I didn't want to see it. I wanted to believe my son had found someone wonderful. I wanted to trust his judgment. The changes started small. He began canceling our weekly Sunday dinners. First it was once a month, then twice, then they became so rare I stopped expecting them. When I asked him about it, he said Jessica had family commitments, work events, friends they needed to see. Always something. Never just, we don't want to. Then he stopped calling as often. Our daily phone conversations became every few days, then once a week, then only when he needed something. And when we did talk, it was different. Guarded. Like he was reading from a script. Like someone was listening in the background, judging every word he said to me. I invited them both over for dinner, trying to build a relationship with her. I figured if I couldn't see my son as much, at least I could include her, make her feel like family. But every time they came over, something went wrong. Or rather, she made it seem like something went wrong. I'd serve pot roast, his favorite since childhood, and she'd mention how heavy the meal was, how she was trying to get him to eat healthier. I'd share a funny story from his childhood, and she'd laugh in that condescending way, saying something like, "Oh, we're trying to help him move past those embarrassing memories." She had this way of making everything I did seem wrong without overtly criticizing me. It was subtle, insidious. A raised eyebrow here, a sigh there, a comment that sounded innocent but carried poison. And my son, my sweet boy, started seeing me through her eyes instead of his own. When they got engaged, I cried. But not tears of joy like I'd always imagined I would. I cried because I knew I was losing him. I could feel it happening, like watching someone slip away in slow motion and being powerless to stop it. At the engagement party, I hugged him and whispered, "I just want you to be happy." And he said, "I know, Mom. I am." But he wouldn't meet my eyes when he said it. The wedding was beautiful. I paid for half of it, even though Jessica's parents are wealthy and could have easily covered everything. I wanted to contribute. Wanted to feel like I was still part of his life, still his mother, still someone who mattered. I wore a dress I couldn't afford and smiled through the entire ceremony even though my heart was breaking. At the reception, Jessica gave a speech thanking everyone. She thanked her parents, her bridesmaids, her college roommate, even the florist. But she didn't mention me. Not once. When my son gave his speech, he thanked his beautiful bride and her family for welcoming him with open arms. He talked about his father-in-law teaching him to golf, about his mother-in-law's kindness. And then, almost as an afterthought, he said, "And thanks to my mom for everything." That was it. Everything. 41 years of love and sacrifice reduced to one generic sentence. I should have said something then. Should have stood up for myself, set boundaries, demanded respect. But I didn't. Because I was afraid. Afraid that if I complained, if I made waves, I'd lose him completely. So I swallowed my hurt, smiled my smile, and told myself it would get better once they settled into married life. It got worse. They moved into my house 6 months after the wedding. They said it was temporary, just until they saved enough for a down payment on their own place. I said yes because I'm an idiot. Because I thought it would bring us closer. Because I missed my son and I thought having him under my roof again would mean getting him back. What it meant was watching him become a stranger in my own home. Jessica rearranged my furniture, redecorated my living room, and threw away my belongings because they didn't match her aesthetic. She criticized my cooking, my cleaning, and my routine. She made rules. In my house, she made rules. No shoes inside. Dinner at exactly 6:30. No television after 9 p.m. because they were trying to establish better sleep habits. And my son said nothing. When I tried to talk to him about it, tried to gently suggest that maybe Jessica was overstepping, he got defensive. He said I was being difficult, that I was refusing to compromise, that I needed to understand that it was their home now too. Their home. Not my home that I was generously sharing. Their home. I bit my tongue. I compromised. I adjusted. I made myself smaller and smaller, trying to fit into whatever space they'd allow me. I stopped watching my favorite shows in my own living room. I started eating dinner in my bedroom. I tiptoed around like a guest in the house I'd worked myself to the bone to afford. Then they had a baby. My grandson. Beautiful, perfect, innocent. I thought maybe this would change things. That becoming a grandmother would give me a role again, a purpose, a connection to my son through his child. I offered to help. Offered to babysit, to do night feedings, to give them a break whenever they needed it. Jessica smiled that cold smile and said, "We've got it handled, Evelyn. We're reading all the latest parenting books. We want to do things our way." Our way. Meaning not my way. Meaning everything I knew about raising a child was outdated, wrong, irrelevant. Never mind that I'd raised a successful, healthy, intelligent man on my own. Never mind that I'd done it with no help, no partner, no resources. According to Jessica, I knew nothing. She watched me like a hawk whenever I held the baby. Corrected me constantly. That's not how you support his head. Don't talk to him in that silly voice, it's bad for language development. We don't believe in letting grandparents spoil children with treats. I couldn't do anything right. And my son, instead of defending me, instead of telling his wife that his mother successfully raised him and maybe deserved some trust, just nodded along. The past 3 years have been slow torture. Watching my son disappear into this marriage, into this woman's control. Watching him look at me with suspicion instead of love. Watching him believe her version of every story, every interaction, every conflict. She'd twist things I said, take them out of context, make innocent comments sound malicious. And he believed her. Every single time. I tolerated it. God help me, I tolerated it all. Because I loved him. Because he's my son. Because I kept hoping that one day he'd wake up and see what was happening. See what she was doing. See that I wasn't the enemy. But that day never came. Instead, yesterday happened. They were hosting a dinner party. Friends from work, couples from their social circle. Jessica asked me to stay in my room during the party. Actually asked me to hide in my own house because she didn't want me making things awkward. I said no. For the first time in 3 years, I stood my ground and said no. This was my house, and I had every right to be present. She didn't like that. But she couldn't exactly tell her guests that she'd tried to banish me to my bedroom, so she smiled her fake smile and said, "Of course, Evelyn. You're always welcome." I came downstairs dressed nicely, planning to be polite and gracious. I greeted their guests, made small talk, and offered to help in the kitchen. Everything was fine until one of their friends, a woman named Sandra, asked me about a photo on the wall. It was a picture of my son at his college graduation, his arm around my shoulders, both of us beaming with pride. I told Sandra the story. How proud I was that day. How hard we'd both worked to get him through school. How I'd worked overtime for years to pay his tuition so he wouldn't graduate with debt. Sandra was moved. She said something lovely about the bond between mothers and sons, about sacrifice and love. And that's when I saw it. The flash of rage in Jessica's eyes. Because the attention was on me. Because someone was acknowledging my role in my son's life. Because for 5 minutes, I wasn't invisible. After the guests left, she pounced. She said I'd made her uncomfortable. That I'd tried to take credit for my son's success, as if he hadn't worked hard on his own. That I'd embarrassed her by talking about money, about sacrifice, about things that made her look bad. She said I'd been rude, dismissive, and undermining. She built this case against me out of nothing, out of thin air, out of her own insecurity and jealousy. And I tried to defend myself. I tried to explain that I was just answering a question, sharing a memory, and being honest about our lives. But she cut me off. She demanded an apology. Said I needed to admit that I was wrong, that I was difficult, that I was the problem. I looked at my son, waiting for him to say something. Anything. Waiting for him to tell his wife that she was overreacting, that I hadn't done anything wrong, that maybe she was the one who needed to apologize for how she'd treated me for years. But he didn't. He looked at me with those cold eyes and said, "Mom, just apologize. Why do you always have to make things difficult? Why do I always have to make things difficult? Me. The woman who'd never made anything difficult in her entire life. The woman who'd smoothed every path, solved every problem, sacrificed everything to make his life easier. I made things difficult." Something inside me snapped. Or maybe it didn't snap. Maybe it crystallized. Maybe it finally became clear. I said, "I'm not apologizing for telling the truth about my own life." Jessica's face went red. She started yelling about boundaries, about respect, about how I didn't understand my place. My place. And my son, instead of telling her to stop, instead of protecting me the way I'd protected him his entire life, joined in. That's when he screamed it. "Apologize to my wife or get out of this house." The silence after was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat. I could feel the years of pain and disappointment and swallowed hurt rising in my throat like bile. I looked at this man, this stranger wearing my son's face, and I realized something profound. I realized I'd been holding on to someone who no longer existed. The boy I raised was gone. And this man, this angry, manipulated, ungrateful man, wasn't worth the tears I'd been crying for 3 years. So I said it. All right. Not "I'm sorry." Not "please don't make me leave." Not "I'll do anything." Just all right. And I walked away. I walked up the stairs to my bedroom while they stood there in stunned silence. I think Jessica expected me to crumble. Expected the dramatic scene, the begging, the breakdown. But I'd given enough performances in this house. I was done being the villain in their story. I closed my bedroom door, sat on my bed, and felt nothing. Not rage, not grief, just this strange, hollow calm. And then I did something I should have done years ago. I called my lawyer. Do you think I'm an idiot? Do you think I've just been sitting here for 3 years taking abuse without any plan, any preparation? I'm not stupid. I'm hurt, I'm heartbroken, but I'm not stupid. I started documenting everything 2 years ago. Every cruel comment, every dismissive remark, every instance of disrespect. I kept records. Dates, times, witnesses when available. I knew that one day I might need proof that I wasn't crazy, that this wasn't all in my head. And I'd been saving money. Secret money that they knew nothing about. I'd been putting aside cash from my business, building an escape fund. Because some part of me always knew it would come to this. Some part of me knew that I'd eventually have to choose between my dignity and my son. My lawyer, Martin, is a good man. Known him for 15 years. When I called him last night, crying angry tears while telling him what happened, he didn't hesitate. He said, "Evelyn, you own that house outright. I have the deed in my files. You've been letting them live there rent-free. You've been more than generous. If you want them out, I can make it happen." I'd been telling myself for months that I couldn't kick them out. They had a baby. They needed help. I was being selfish to even think about it. But lying in my bed last night, replaying my son's words over and over, I realized something crucial. I realized that helping them was enabling them. That my presence, my tolerance, my doormat behavior was allowing Jessica to treat me like garbage and my son to think that was acceptable. So I told Martin to draw up eviction papers. For both of them. Legal, official, no room for argument. I wanted them out of my house, out of my life, out of my daily torture. Martin worked through the night. God bless him, he worked through the night because he knew I needed this. I needed to take back my power, my home, my life. I didn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to them downstairs, hearing Jessica's voice saying something about finally putting her in her place and my son laughing. Laughing. At my pain. At my humiliation. And whatever tiny part of me that still hoped for reconciliation died right then. I packed. Not to leave, to be prepared. I packed my important documents, my jewelry, my mother's china, everything that mattered. I wasn't running away. I was getting ready to reclaim my home. Morning came slowly. I heard them waking up, heard the baby crying, heard the sounds of breakfast being made in my kitchen. I got dressed carefully. Put on my best suit, did my makeup, styled my hair. I wanted to look powerful. I wanted to look like the woman I'd been before I let them make me small. Martin arrived at 8 a.m., right on schedule. I heard the doorbell, heard Jessica answer it with that fake cheery voice she uses for strangers. Heard her confusion when Martin introduced himself as my attorney. Heard her call for my son, her voice suddenly became sharp with suspicion. I came down the stairs slowly, deliberately. Took my time. Let them wait. Let them wonder. When I reached the bottom, they were both standing in the living room. Jessica looked annoyed, like this was some inconvenience, some drama I was creating. My son looked wary, defensive, already preparing to fight whatever battle his wife needed him to fight. I walked past them both and sat down at my dining room table. My table. In my house. Martin stood beside me, professional and calm. "What's going on, Mom?" My son's voice was tight, controlled. Still treating me like I was the problem. I didn't answer him. I nodded to Martin. Martin placed an envelope on the table. Mrs. Morgan has asked me to deliver these documents to you. They're eviction notices. You and your wife have 30 days to vacate the premises. The silence was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I watched the color drain from my son's face, watched Jessica's mouth drop open in shock. This wasn't in her script. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. I was supposed to apologize, grovel, and accept my role as the scapegoat. I wasn't supposed to fight back. You can't do this. Jessica found her voice first, high and panicked. This is our home. We have a baby. You can't just kick us out. This is my home, I said quietly, calmly. My name is on the deed. Mine alone. I've allowed you to live here rent-free for 3 years. That ends now. Mom, this is crazy. My son stepped forward, his face a mix of anger and disbelief. You can't seriously be doing this. Over an argument? You're going to make us homeless over a stupid argument? I looked at him then, really looked at him. This isn't about an argument. This is about 3 years of disrespect. 3 years of being made to feel like a guest in my own home. 3 years of watching you choose her manipulation over my love. 3 years of tolerating abuse because I was afraid of losing you. But I realized something last night when you screamed at me to get out. I realized I already lost you. And I'm done sacrificing my peace, my home, and my dignity for someone who doesn't value any of it. This is because I asked you to apologize? His voice was rising. Because I stood up for my wife? You're really that petty? Martin cleared his throat. Mr. Morgan, this isn't a negotiation. Your mother owns this property outright. She has every legal right to decide who lives here. You've been residing here without a lease agreement, which makes you tenants at will. The eviction notice is legally binding. You have 30 days. Jessica's face twisted into something ugly. You manipulative bitch. You've been planning this. You've been waiting for an excuse. You've always been jealous of me, of our relationship, of the fact that your son chose me. Jessica. My voice was steel. My son chose you. You're right about that. He chose you over me, over truth, over basic human decency. That's his choice to live with. But this is my house, and I choose who lives in it. And I no longer choose you. We don't have anywhere to go. Jessica was full on shouting now. We have a baby. What kind of grandmother does this? The kind who's tired of being treated like she's disposable. I stood up, faced them both. You demanded an apology from me yesterday for the crime of loving my son, of being proud of him, of having a history with him that makes you uncomfortable. Well, here's my response. I'm not apologizing. Not for raising him. Not for sacrificing him. Not for existing in his life before you. And I'm not living in this toxic environment anymore. You're the toxic one. Jessica screeched. You're controlling and manipulative, and you can't stand that he doesn't need you anymore. If he doesn't need me, I said quietly, then you should have no problem finding somewhere else to live. My son was shaking with rage. I can't believe you're doing this. I can't believe my own mother would throw us out on the street. After everything. After everything? I cut him off, my voice finally breaking with all the pain I'd been holding. After everything I did for you? Everything I sacrificed? After I raised you alone, worked 3 jobs, went without so you could have? After I paid for your college, your wedding, supported you and your wife for 3 years? Yes, after everything. After 3 years of being disrespected in my own home. After years of watching you become someone I don't recognize. After yesterday when you screamed at me to get out of my own house. Yes, after all of that, I'm choosing myself. You're making a huge mistake, my son said coldly. If you do this, if you go through with this, I'll never forgive you. You'll never see your grandson again. Never. Is that what you want? And there it was. The threat. The ultimate manipulation. Using my grandchild as a weapon against me. I looked at this man, this stranger, and felt the last threads of obligation snap. If that's your choice, I said, my voice steady despite my breaking heart, then so be it. But understand this, I didn't make that choice. You did. You chose to believe lies about me. You chose to allow your wife to disrespect me. You chose to issue ultimatums. You chose to threaten me with losing my grandchild rather than asking yourself why we're here. So if he grows up without knowing me, that's on you. That's your choice, not mine. Martin handed them the paperwork. Everything is outlined here. You have 30 days. I suggest you use that time to find appropriate housing. Any attempt to contest this eviction will be unsuccessful. Mrs. Morgan has been more than generous, and she's well within her rights. Jessica snatched the papers, her hands shaking. We're calling a lawyer. A real lawyer. This is bullshit. This is elder abuse. We'll do whatever you feel you need to do, Martin interrupted calmly. But I assure you, this eviction will stand. Mrs. Morgan has documentation of your residency arrangement, or lack thereof. She has records of verbal agreements that you've repeatedly violated. She has cause, she has right, and she has ownership. Your case won't go anywhere. I gathered my purse, my phone, and my car keys. I'm going to spend the day with my friend Helen. When I come back this evening, I expect you both to be civil. For the next 30 days, we'll coexist as peacefully as possible. You'll respect my space, and I'll respect yours. But make no mistake, this house is mine, and my tolerance for your behavior has reached its limit. I walked toward the door, Martin following me. Behind me, I heard Jessica start to cry. Loud, dramatic sobs. How could she do this to us? With a baby? What kind of person does this? My son's voice was thick with anger and something else, maybe the first hint of doubt. Mom, wait. We can talk about this. Just calm down. Let's all calm down. I paused at the door but didn't turn around. I am calm. That's what you don't understand. For the first time in 3 years, I'm perfectly calm. I know exactly what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. 30 days. Find somewhere else to live. I walked out of my house, got into my car, and drove away. And I didn't cry. Not yet. I was too angry to cry. Too hurt. Too done. I spent that day at Helen's house. Helen has been my best friend for 20 years. She'd watched this whole situation unfold, and had begged me repeatedly to stand up for myself, to set boundaries, to stop letting them treat me like garbage. When I told her what happened, what I'd done, she hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Finally, she whispered. Finally, you're choosing yourself. But choosing yourself doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. God, it hurts. It hurt like someone had reached into my chest and torn my heart out. Because that was my son. My baby boy. The child I'd loved more than life itself. And I'd just evicted him from my home, from my life. But I couldn't keep living like that. Couldn't keep shrinking myself, apologizing for existing, tolerating cruelty just to maintain peace. That's not peace. That's surrender. And I was done surrendering. Over the next few days, my phone exploded. Calls from my son. Texts from Jessica ranging from apologetic to threatening to manipulative. Voicemails from both of them. Jessica's family called me, telling me I was heartless, cruel, vindictive. Some of their friends reached out on social media, calling me a terrible grandmother, a bitter old woman who couldn't let go. I blocked them all. Every single one. I didn't owe them explanations, didn't owe them my energy, didn't owe them anything. Martin fielded the legal calls. There were 3 different lawyers Jessica hired and fired in 2 weeks when they all told her the same thing: I had every right to evict them. They moved out on day 28. I stayed with Helen until they were gone. I couldn't watch them pack, couldn't handle the drama, the arguments, the last-ditch attempts at manipulation. Martin supervised to ensure they took only their belongings and didn't damage anything. When I came home, the house was empty. They'd taken their things, and thankfully, that was all. No vandalism, no destroyed property. Just empty rooms where they'd lived. I walked through my house, room by room, and felt like I could finally breathe. I hired a cleaning service. Had the whole place deep cleaned, like I was scrubbing away 3 years of toxicity. I painted the walls. Rearranged the furniture back to how I liked it. Brought back my decorations, my photos, my things. I reclaimed my space. And slowly, painfully, I started to reclaim myself. I started seeing a therapist. Dr. Sarah Coleman. She specialized in family trauma and helping people rebuild after toxic relationships. At first, I felt silly. I was 65 years old, seeing a therapist because my son and daughter-in-law were mean to me. But Dr. Coleman helped me see it wasn't silly at all. What I'd experienced was emotional abuse, manipulation, gaslighting. She helped me understand that standing up for myself wasn't cruel, it was necessary. I joined a support group for estranged parents. Sat in a circle with other mothers and fathers who'd been pushed out of their children's lives, who'd been made to feel like they were the problem. Their stories broke my heart and healed it at the same time. I wasn't alone. This happened to so many people. Good parents who'd done their best, who'd loved their children fiercely, who'd been cast aside when they were no longer useful or when they wouldn't play their assigned role in someone else's narrative. I started reconnecting with old friends I'd neglected during those 3 years. Started going to book clubs and dinner parties and movie nights. I'd isolated myself without even realizing it, staying home to avoid conflict, to be available if my son needed something, to keep peace. But peace at what cost? I'd sacrificed my social life, my hobbies, my joy. I took up painting. Always wanted to, never had time. Bought myself an easel and canvases and spent hours in my sunroom creating terrible, wonderful, healing art. I joined a class at the community center. Met other beginners who laughed at their mistakes and celebrated small victories. I traveled. I took a trip to Italy I'd been dreaming about for 30 years. Walked the streets of Rome, ate pasta in small trattorias, stood in front of the Sistine Chapel and cried at the beauty of it. Realized that I'd spent so much of my life being a mother, being a provider, being useful to someone else, that I'd forgotten how to just be Evelyn. My business flourished. Without the emotional drain of my home life, I had energy to invest in my work. I took on new clients, expanded my services, and hired 2 associates. I'd been coasting for years, doing just enough, but not pushing myself because I was exhausted. Now I remembered why I'd loved this work in the first place. I bought new furniture. Decorated my house exactly how I wanted it. Bright colors, comfortable pieces, art that made me happy. No more neutral tones to please someone else. No more boring, safe choices. This was my home, my space, my life. And I started to feel something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Real peace. Not the fake peace of surrender, of keeping quiet to avoid conflict. But actual, deep, soul-level peace that comes from living authentically, from respecting yourself, from refusing to be small for someone else's comfort. The calls from my son eventually slowed, then stopped. For 6 months, I heard nothing. No calls, no texts, no attempts at contact. Part of me ached for him every single day. Part of me wanted to call, to check if they were okay, if the baby was healthy, if they'd found a decent place to live. But I didn't. Because I knew that reaching out would be interpreted as weakness, as an opening to try to manipulate me back into my old role. I found out through mutual friends that they'd moved in with Jessica's parents. That the marriage was strained. That Jessica's family was apparently not as tolerant of her behavior as I'd been. That her mother had some strong opinions about how Jessica treated people. I felt a small, petty satisfaction at that. Not pride, exactly. Just validation. Confirmation that I wasn't crazy, that the problem wasn't me. Then, 8 months after they moved out, my son called. I almost didn't answer. Stared at his name on my phone screen for so long it almost went to voicemail. But something made me pick up. Mom. His voice was different. Quieter. Tired. Mom, can we talk? I'm listening, I said, my voice neutral. He paused, and I heard something I hadn't heard in years. Uncertainty. Vulnerability. I messed up. I messed up so badly, and I don't know how to fix it. I didn't respond. Didn't jump in to reassure him, to make it easier, to do the emotional labor I'd always done. I just waited. Jessica and I are separated, he continued. We've been in counseling, and the therapist, she helped me see things. About how we treated you. About how I let Jessica treat you. About how I treated you. Still, I waited. I was so stupid, Mom. So blind. She's been doing the same things to me that she did to you. The manipulation, the gaslighting, the making me feel like I'm always wrong. And when I tried to talk to her about it, tried to set boundaries, his voice cracked. She did to me what she did to you. Made me the villain. Told me I was the problem. And suddenly I understood. I understood everything. And it only took you losing your marriage to figure out what you put me through, I said quietly. I know. I know, and I'm sorry. God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for everything. For not believing you. For taking her side. For yelling at you. For threatening you with my son. For making you feel like you had to kick us out of your own home. For being the worst son in the world. He was crying now. Full on sobbing. The sound broke something in me, but I held firm. Because sorry wasn't enough. Sorry was a start, but it wasn't enough. Why are you calling me now? I asked. Because you need something? Because your marriage fell apart and you need somewhere to live? Because Jessica isn't there to tell you I'm the villain anymore? No, he said quickly. I mean, yes, I need you, but not like that. Not for housing or money or anything. I need my mom. I need to try to fix what I broke. I need you to know that I see it now. All of it. How much you sacrificed. How hard you worked. How much you loved me. How badly I failed you. I closed my eyes. You threatened to keep my grandson from me. You used your son as a weapon against me. Do you understand how much that hurts? Yes. I do now. And I'm sorry. He asks about you, you know. He's almost 4 now, and he sees pictures of you around Jessica's parents' house, and he asks where Grandma Evelyn is. And I don't know what to tell him. My heart clenched. My grandson. I'd missed so much. First words, first steps, birthdays, milestones. All sacrificed at the altar of my dignity. I don't know if I can do this, I whispered. I don't know if I can let you back in. What if it happens again? What if you meet someone new and she doesn't like me either? What if I'm just setting myself up to be hurt all over again? I understand, he said. I do. And I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm just asking, I'm begging, for a chance to show you that I can be better. That I can be the son you deserved all along. We talked for 2 hours that night. He told me everything. About the counseling, about how Jessica had been treating him the same way she treated me once he started questioning her. About how her parents had witnessed her behavior and confronted her. About how he'd finally seen the pattern, the manipulation, the lies. About how he'd finally understood what he'd put me through. He didn't ask to move back in. Didn't ask for money. Just asked if maybe, someday, we could have coffee. Could talk. Could start rebuilding something. I told him I needed time to think about it. Needed to talk to my therapist. Needed to decide if I could risk my peace, my healing, my hard-won happiness for the possibility of reconciliation. Dr. Coleman was skeptical. She reminded me that people don't usually change, that the cycle of abuse and apology and abuse again was common. But she also said that sometimes, people do genuine work and genuine growth. That it was up to me to decide what I could handle, what I could risk, what I needed to protect my own well-being. I thought about it for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of weighing my desire to have my son back against my need to protect myself. 2 weeks of remembering the pain, the humiliation, the years of hurt. 2 weeks of also remembering the good times, the love, the boy he used to be. I decided to meet him for coffee. 1 hour in a public place. Neutral ground. No promises, no commitments, just a conversation. He showed up early. Looked older, tired, humbled. He brought photos of my grandson. Videos of the baby, not a baby anymore, almost 4 years old, playing, laughing, asking questions. He didn't try to manipulate me with them. Just shared them, said, I thought you'd want to see him. We talked. Really talked. He told me about his therapy, about the work he was doing to understand his own behavior, his own culpability. He didn't blame everything on Jessica. He owned his choices, his failures, his cruelty. I chose her over you, he said, staring at his coffee cup. Every time, I chose her. And the worst part is that I convinced myself it was the right thing to do. That I was being a good husband. Supporting your spouse meant dismissing your mother. I was so wrong. Why did you believe her? I asked. Why did you believe her lies about me instead of trusting what you knew about me? You knew me your whole life. She was in your life for 3 years. Why did her words mean more than mine? He was quiet for a long time. I think I wanted to believe I'd found someone who needed me more than you did. You were always so strong, so capable. You never asked for help, never complained, never made me feel like I had to take care of you. And Jessica, she was always needing something. Always needing me to defend her, protect her, validate her. And that felt good. It felt like I was finally the strong one, the provider, the hero. I didn't realize until counseling that what I thought was her needing me was actually her controlling me. I understood that more than I wanted to. Because I'd made myself strong out of necessity, not choice. Because I'd never wanted my son to feel burdened by my struggles. And that strength, that independence, had somehow made me disposable in his eyes. We met for coffee 3 more times over the next month. Slowly, carefully, I started to trust that maybe this change was real. That maybe he'd genuinely grown, genuinely seen the light, genuinely wanted to do better. He asked if he could bring my grandson to meet me. I said yes. The day they came over, I was so nervous I almost canceled. But then my doorbell rang, and I opened it, and there was this beautiful little boy with my son's eyes, holding his father's hand and looking up at me with curiosity. Hi, he said shyly. Are you Grandma Evelyn? I knelt down to his level, tears streaming down my face. Yes, sweetheart. I am. Daddy says you're really nice and you miss me. I missed you so much, I whispered. He thought about that, then stepped forward and hugged me. This small, perfect child who didn't know about the drama, the pain, the years of estrangement. Who just knew that here was his grandma, and grandmas give good hugs. We're rebuilding. Slowly. It's been a year now since that first coffee. My son and Jessica are divorced. She's seeing someone new, still playing the same games with someone else. My son has custody of my grandson, and they've moved into a small apartment across town. He has a good job, he's still in therapy, and he's trying. We have dinner once a week. He brings my grandson over, and we cook together. I teach the little one how to make chocolate chip cookies the way I taught his father. We're creating new memories, new traditions. But I've also kept my boundaries. He doesn't live with me. We have our separate spaces, our separate lives. He respects my time, my decisions, my autonomy. And he's told me something that helps. He's told me that he tells his therapist, his friends, anyone who'll listen, about what he did. About how he treated me. Not to punish himself, but to hold himself accountable. To make sure he never forgets how badly he failed me so he never does it again. Is everything perfect? No. There are still hard days. Days when I remember the pain, the betrayal, the 3 years of abuse. Days when I look at him and wonder if I'm being stupid, if I'm setting myself up to be hurt again. Days when the trust feels fragile as spun glass. But there are also good days. Days when I watch him play with his son and see glimpses of the boy I raised. Days when he thanks me for giving him another chance, for being strong enough to walk away and strong enough to let him back in on my terms. Days when I feel like maybe, just maybe, we're going to be okay. Jessica? She tried to contact me a few months ago. Some long messages about how she'd been reflecting, how she wanted to apologize, how she hoped we could move forward. I deleted it without responding. I don't need her apology. I don't need her acknowledgement. I don't need anything from her. She's my grandson's mother, and I'll be civil when necessary, but I don't owe her my forgiveness or my time. So what have I learned from all of this? What wisdom have I gained from this nightmare? I've learned that walking away isn't a weakness. Sometimes walking away is the strongest thing you can do. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their actions without your interference, without your safety net, without your endless capacity to forgive and forget. I've learned that family doesn't excuse abuse. Being someone's mother, someone's daughter, someone's sister doesn't mean you have to tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or cruelty. Blood doesn't give anyone the right to treat you like garbage and expect you to smile through it. I've learned that being a parent doesn't mean being the doormat. For years, I thought being a good mother meant sacrificing everything, accepting everything, forgiving everything. But that's not healthy for anyone. Not for me, and not for my son. By allowing him to treat me badly without consequences, I was teaching him that it was okay. That he could get away with it. That his actions didn't matter. I wasn't doing either of us any favors. I've learned that self-respect is worth more than forced apologies. I could have apologized that night. Could have groveled, could have said whatever they wanted to hear. Could have kept peace at the cost of my dignity. But what kind of peace would that have been? The peace of surrender, of defeat, of accepting less than I deserved. I chose my dignity over their comfort, and I'd make that choice again every single time. I've learned that sometimes peace begins the moment you stop explaining yourself. I spent 3 years trying to defend myself, trying to prove I wasn't the villain Jessica painted me as, trying to make my son see the truth. But you can't logic someone out of a position they didn't logic themselves into. He believed her because he wanted to believe her, Because it served him, because it was easier than confronting the truth. No amount of explaining was going to change that. Only time, experience, and consequences could do that. I've learned that you teach people how to treat you. And I'd been teaching my son and daughter-in-law that I would accept anything, tolerate anything, forgive anything. That there were no boundaries they couldn't cross, no lines they couldn't violate. By refusing to set limits, I'd created a situation where they felt entitled to treat me however they wanted. The eviction wasn't cruel. It was the first boundary I'd ever truly enforced. I've learned that healing isn't linear. Some days I wake up feeling strong, proud of what I did, confident in my choices. Other days I wake up wondering if I'm a terrible person, if I should have tried harder, if I gave up too easily. The doubt creeps in. The guilt whispers. But I've learned to recognize those voices as echoes of old patterns, old training that told me a good mother sacrifices everything and asks for nothing. I've learned that you can love someone and still need distance from them. I love my son. I always will. He's my child, my blood, my heart walking around outside my body. But I also needed space from him. Needed to protect myself from him. Those two truths coexist, and that's okay. Love doesn't mean unlimited access. Love doesn't mean no consequences. Love doesn't mean accepting abuse. I've learned that rebuilding trust takes time. My son and I are in a better place now, but it's taken a year of consistent effort on his part. A year of him showing up, following through, respecting boundaries, doing the work. And even now, there's a part of me that's guarded. That keeps a little distance. That remembers. Maybe that will heal with more time. Maybe it won't. Either way, I'm not rushing it. Most importantly, I've learned that I matter. My feelings matter. My comfort matters. My peace matters. My happiness matters. For so much of my life, I put everyone else first. My son, my career, my responsibilities. I made myself small, made my needs invisible, made my existence about service to others. But I matter too. I'm not just a mother, not just a grandmother, not just a caretaker. I'm Evelyn. I'm a whole person with desires and dreams and boundaries and rights. And I'll never forget that again. To anyone listening to this who's in a similar situation, who's being pushed out by a daughter-in-law or son-in-law, who's watching their child choose someone else over them, who's being gaslit and manipulated and made to feel crazy, listen to me. You're not crazy. You're not too sensitive. You're not difficult. You're not the problem. And you have choices. You have power. You don't have to accept it. You don't have to smile through the pain. You don't have to sacrifice your peace for their comfort. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to say no. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to choose yourself. Is it easy? God, no. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than raising a child alone. Harder than building a business from nothing. Harder than anything I've faced. Because it goes against every instinct, every lesson we've been taught about being a good parent. We're supposed to be selfless. We're supposed to endure. We're supposed to love unconditionally. But unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional tolerance. It doesn't mean accepting abuse. It doesn't mean staying in situations that destroy you. You can love someone and still need to protect yourself from them. You can be a good parent and still have boundaries. You can choose your peace and not be selfish. I'm 65 years old. I have gray hair and wrinkles and a lifetime of experiences behind me. And I'm just now learning how to stand up for myself. Just now learning that I'm allowed to take up space, to have needs, to expect respect. Better late than never, right? So to my son, if you ever hear this, I love you. I forgave you. But I'll never forget. And that's okay. Forgetting isn't the point. The point is that we both learned something. You learned that actions have consequences, that people have limits, that love doesn't mean unlimited forgiveness. And I learned that I'm strong enough to walk away from people I love if that's what my well-being requires. To Jessica, if you somehow hear this, I don't hate you. I pity you. I pity anyone who has to tear others down to feel powerful. I pity anyone who manipulates and controls instead of connecting genuinely. I pity anyone who will probably repeat this pattern with every relationship they have. I hope you get help. I hope you do the work. I hope you become a better person. But that's your journey, not mine. I'm done being a character in your story. To my grandson, someday you'll be old enough to understand all of this. Someday you might ask questions about why grandma wasn't around for your early years. And when that day comes, I'll tell you the truth. Age appropriately, gently, but honestly. Because I won't lie to protect people who hurt me. I'll tell you that sometimes adults make mistakes. That sometimes families break and rebuild differently. That sometimes love means stepping away until it's healthy to step back in. And to myself, you did the right thing. On the days when you doubt it, when the guilt creeps in, when you wonder if you were too harsh or too cold or too unforgiving, remember. Remember the 3 years of pain. Remember the disrespect, the manipulation, the gaslighting. Remember how small they made you feel. Remember the moment when you chose yourself, when you finally said enough. That moment changed your life. That moment gave you back your power. That moment taught you that you matter. Never forget that you matter. My name is Evelyn Morgan. I'm 65 years old. Yesterday was a year ago now, but I can still hear my son's voice screaming at me to apologize or get out. I can still feel the shock, the pain, the betrayal. But I can also feel the strength that came after. The peace. The freedom. The rediscovery of myself. I evicted my son and daughter-in-law from my home. Some people think that makes me heartless. Some people think I should have been more understanding, more forgiving, more willing to sacrifice. Those people can mind their own business. I saved myself. I reclaimed my life. I chose my peace over their comfort. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because I'm not just a mother. I'm not just a grandmother. I'm not just a caretaker, a sacrifice, a supporting character in someone else's story. I'm Evelyn. And I matter.